Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Canary Room. First one of 2017, and as you can see, we've had a move. So the shed is not quite up to full operational speed. That'll become obvious as we shoot some things around a little bit later on. But we've moved house, we've moved the birds. They actually came into the new home last night, so they've had just under 12 hours to settle. I would say to anybody, if you think moving house is a stressful experience, try moving 60 odd canaries and a room and then reinstalling it somewhere else and rewiring and bleaching cages and everything else. So if I look slightly older than I did this time last year, it's because this whole experience has aged me terribly. Coming up on the show today, we've got some new arrivals to meet. Got some preventative measures that I want to show you too, because when we moved the shed, we found a nest of mice inside the cavity wall. A couple of preventative tips that we'll show you in a second on that. We've been over to Barnsley, so we've got some footage from Gerald's. We've got some new arrivals to meet that we brought in from Gerald's. We'll take a look at some of the winter feeding regime to keep the fat off the birds at this time of year, and we'll catch up with the reds. As always, sit back and enjoy the show. So the move was not without its trials and tribulations. Unfortunately, we lost a couple of red poles in the move, so we're down to 4 red poles now. Unusually, it was the pair that I would say were the least quality that we lost, and bird keepers will tell you it's always the good ones that go. In this case, touch wood, fortunately, although it was always distressing to lose any birds, it was 2 of the less quality birds that had gone. You can see here we've got the show cage boxes that we transported the birds in. You know, regular viewers to the show will know that there was normally flight cages here. We're going to do a little bit of reconfiguring, I think. We're going to take the opportunity to do that and change things around a little bit. And as the season develops, I may even put some more cages here, some weaning cages, rather than a flight cage. But a little bit more on that in future episodes, still undecided. We'll take a look now at the shed being put up. So some time-lapse footage of the guys. It was put up on a Monday. It was blowing a hoolie outside. The rain was almost horizontal. It was a god-awful day. We'll see in a minute some of the preventative measures that we've taken, but you'll notice the shed is lifted and it's on beams now, just to get a really nice air circulation underneath it. You'll also see from the footage that we've been refelting on top, so we've got a nice new roof in. Keep all the inclement weather out, and the way things are going this January, we're going to need it. So when the shed was moved and the panelling was taken, the team found a small nest complete with inhabitants. Used some of the foam, the expandable foam, to block it, and I will be putting down some poison. And I have no real issues with mice at all, but there's no place for them in the bird room. They gathered a lot of seed. I can only assume that they've been taking it from the flight cage of the red poles, because their seed was on the floor. All of the other seed in the canary room is in containers, so I can only assume that that's where it was coming from. I've altered that now, so their seed's in a hopper halfway up, and we can have a look at that now. And obviously fastidiously sweep up, and all of the seed in the canary room is kept in containers, so there's no access to seed in the canary room, so I can only assume that's where it was coming from. Hopefully they were moved and they were put in a safe location. So a couple of preventative measures. I will now put down some poison, just in case anything does come into the shed. And as I say, I've got, the God's creatures, they've an absolute right to live, but they will cause damage to the birds. They will disturb the birds. And knowing that they've been in the shed starts to illuminate some things as to some of the challenges, particularly with the red poles last year. So I am going to look at the cage configuration there. There is wire meshing on the windows, as we know, to stop little entrants coming in, although there are gaps in the bottom, and I suspect that's probably where they've come in. So the final preventative technique that we've got to keep those little critters at bay, and the first new addition in the canary room, is this little fella. Let's meet him now. This little boy is Angus. You can see he's taken a liking already to the birds. I'm not going to let him down. It wouldn't be fair on him or them. But hopefully, when he gets a little bit bigger, we can let him run under the shed and see if there's anything there, and he can catch it for his tea. So we've met one new arrival in the shed. In a moment we'll meet 4 more. We had another trip over to Barnsley. Always good to see Gerald, always good to see his birds, particularly at this time of year. Took a little bit of footage while I was there, so let's take a look at that now. So here we can see Gerald's hens in his flight cages. He's going to run with around 32 hens this year and 16 cockbirds. And as we pan across, difficult to see the quality of the birds in this shot, but you can see that there's plenty of space for them to fly around in, and plenty of perching space for them as well. This really doesn't do this clear buff cock any justice, this image, but it was a lovely bird, an absolute belter. The next shot is of a heavily variegated buff. I loved this bird. In fact, I liked it so much that there's probably 2 or 3 pieces of footage of it. A really stylish buff cock, a really stylish bird, and the kind of bird that I'd like to have in my shed. So we first met this little fella back in October on our visit to Barnsley. Viewers to the show will remember it was a bird that I was particularly keen on. When we saw it then, it hadn't quite finished, and to me it was an absolute stunning bird. It went on to the Midlands show and won its class of around about 66, 67 variegated yellow cocks. I was delighted when just before Christmas, Gerald, having done his final selection, said that I could take the bird. Now, it is an absolutely beautiful variegated yellow cock. You can see in some of the earlier footage that we've shot of this bird, its size, its shape, its type. It's absolutely ideal for me and for what I'm looking for. With the new system I'm going to run this year, it'll probably get a couple of buff hens. And we'll talk more about the breeding techniques, the breeding approach in future episodes. We will probably get a couple of hens. There is a possibility that this bird is a cinnamon carrier. Now, it was bred out of a carrier cock with a normal hen. So there's a 50-50 chance that it's a carrier. I'll use him sparingly this year, and I won't run him as far and wide as perhaps I was going to. If he turns out to be a carrier, I'll be very, very happy, because it means that the cinnamon line, which we've basically gone back to square one on, will get a chance to reinvigorate itself. We'll have some close-up looks at this bird now, but you can see he moves lovely. He's got a real nice type about him. He's only been in the shed less than 24 hours, so he's still got a little bit of time to settle in here. It's a new environment for him. The move will have taken a little bit out of him. He'll be a little bit stressed. But you can see that he's a very, very useful bird. Nice and short. A real useful addition to the variegated lines and the light lines for next year. I've waited 12 months to bring this next bird into the shed. This bird is a variegated buff cock, and it is a cinnamon carrier. Now, it's now the only carrier cock that I've got in the shed. And in the next episode, we'll meet all of the cocks that we're going to run with next year. So the 12 cock birds that form the 5 stud we'll see in more detail next week. This bird, as I say, I've waited 12 months to bring in. He is going to be now a new refreshing invigoration of the cinnamon line. He's bred some beautiful birds for Gerald this year, birds that Gerald has retained, and that tells me that there's some real quality in this bird. He's actually a Best in Show winner. He won the Cumbria Border and Fife, he won Best Variegated there, and he went on to take Best in Show. And the previous week, he'd won Best Variegated at another show. Not showing himself brilliantly at the moment. He does pick his wings up, although they're slightly down at the moment, which would indicate a little bit of stress. But even as an over-year bird, he's short, he's got lovely roundness, a good break in the neck, real strong position and a really good head. And even though he's not 100%, and the move will take it out of all of the birds, even though he's not quite 100% yet, you can see that he's got that quality in him. And this bird, as I say, is the only cinnamon carrier I've got in the shed now. He's going to be the formation of a new cinnamon line. I've ripped up the storyboard on the cinnamon line, having sort of spent 3 years trying to get it into a place. It wasn't there. You can see he's starting to sing, so there's a fitness there in him already, which is great. And now it's about gentle conditioning for the season as we move forward. So regular viewers will know all about the challenges we had with the cinnamon line. We talked about going back to the drawing board on it. We'd met in a previous episode of the show a self-cinnamon yellow hen that we brought in from Graham Holsworth to help invigorate that line. Yesterday I was incredibly fortunate enough to pick up this variegated cinnamon yellow hen. Again, another colour special winner for Gerald. He planned to keep it. He'd actually planned to run it with the variegated buff cock that we've just seen, and that's a pair I'll certainly run. The variegated buff cock will cover both cinnamon hens. I'll also probably run him over another, just a normal hen as well, to see how he gets on there and see what he produces. This is a very, very nice little bird as a cinnamon. Again, beautifully marked. I really, really like the dark cinnamon yellow tail on it. Now, as we know, it's pretty birds don't win shows. Markings don't really mean that much, but the balance of the markings are nice, and that strong dark tail is really nice, and it sets this bird off very, very nicely. You just see the cinnamon tips on its wings. Could do with a little bit better position, I think. At the moment it's slightly over the perches, but there's a roundness of its shoulders there to see. Again, it's a quality bird. It's bred some lovely birds for Gerald, which he's retained, and that's important for me. Knowing that he's retained some of the progeny off this bird is important in the decision-making process on when to bring birds in. If he'd not kept anything off either of the 2 flighted birds that we've seen now, then I'd have thought twice about bringing them into the shed, because the visual quality of the birds is important in year 1, but actually what's really important is what they breed. And if they're not breeding birds of better or similar quality to themselves, then you've got to ask yourself the question, why are they in the shed? Certainly if you want to keep and breed and develop a successful winning stud of canaries. The 4th and final acquisition is a very, very useful 3 parts dark yellow hen. Now you can see this bird has got body to burn on it. It's got a fabulous roundness. For a yellow, you could argue it was a little bit thick in the neck, but I have a very stylish, heavily variegated buff cock that I will pair with this bird. This bird was bred out of Gerald's self-green buff hen that was mauve ring number 10. Now that bird was never beaten on the show bench. I came second to it at the South Cheshire and North Staff show last year, or the year before last rather, but it was never beaten It was best green on a number of occasions. Gerald's retained the bird again this year. He paired it with his very best yellow cock last year and produced this bird. Now, it's not the showiest of birds, but there's a lot of quality. It's a very, very nice dark yellow stock hen. I was a little bit light on dark yellow hens. You'll recall I bought one in from Adam Kendall. I've got one already in the shed, and there's a blue yellow. So this is a nice addition in there. It's mid to end of January now, about to get a cold snap. I anticipate there's 20 hens in the shed. I anticipate that before the season comes, we may lose one or two of them. It's, you know, any underlying conditions will take effect in the cold. But if we just look at this bird, the shoulder on it, the style, the stamp, the way that it stands, it's a really, really useful bird. As I say, I didn't go to get this bird yesterday. I went to get the 2 cock birds. I came away with 2 hens as well. I'm absolutely delighted. Being January now, you know, it's really quite late to be bringing birds in. Certainly late to be moving birds. I've noticed 1 or 2 feathers from the new birds I brought in are starting to loosen a little bit. I'm hoping that they don't go into a full molt, because that'll make it very difficult for the season. And you remember we had that challenge last year. We're about 5 or 6 weeks earlier this year moving them than we did last year. So with any luck, it won't have too much of an impact. You can hear in the shed that the birds are singing. They're singing quite lustfully, so hopefully we'll be okay. But this little green yellow hen, really pleased to have her on board. So we've met the new arrivals in the room. We know we've moved the shed, and we're starting now to get ready for the breeding season. We've made a great deal about overwintering the birds at the level that they'll breed in for the following year. And now we've moved the birds, you can see that the cocks are singled off in the top row of cages and in row 5 of cages. The bottom row of row 6 I'll use, it's a little bit low down to be honest, I'll use for young when they come, and there's plenty of cages available for young. And then the hens are in the rows that they'll be. You'll notice we are still in the middle of the move, so there's a row of cages here missing. They are still to come to the Canary room. They were housing birds right up until about 5 o'clock yesterday, so they need to be cleaned out where they currently are, bleached through, and then they'll be installed before the next show. So the birds here, the fifes are all be bred on this back wall this year. That's the plan. Last year I bred them on the side wall and the back wall. This year very much fifes on the back wall. The other Canaries and the British will be on this left wall. What I've also done, and we'll spin round in a minute and take a look, is I've now singled off all of the reds. And the reason I've done that is when birds are singled off, it's easier to tell whether they're cocks or hens. You'll remember one of the reds we were unsure about. We thought it might have been a cock. We hoped it was a hen. Unsurprisingly, the bird has turned out to be a cock. As we were filming over there before, I caught it out the corner of my eye. It was absolutely bouncing and singing lustfully. There is absolutely no way it could be a hen. Hens do sing, but they don't sing like this. So we'll take a look now at the reds on this wall. You can see these cages, you've caught different shots of them throughout the show. They're still very much under construction. The top 2 rows is where these birds will breed. The cages underneath are likely to be where we put the young that we breed from the fifes and some of the other birds as well. Let's have a little look at the reds now. So eagle-eyed viewers amongst you may notice the seed hoppers on here, particularly on the hens. There's fewer seed hoppers than there have been in previous episodes, and the seed mixture is slightly different. So you'll know on previous episodes some of the birds are carrying a bit of fat. These birds have been in flight cages for a week with an excessive amount of food and have overgorged themselves. Birds carrying too much weight will have difficulty in breeding. So I've reduced the number of seed hoppers on, and I've thinned the mix down with a plain canary to try and help take some of the weight off. Now, they'll get a regular supply and a fresh supply of greens. I'm not overly concerned about the cockbirds. They haven't, and certainly, you know, you can hear them in the room. They seem to be fighting fit. I'm not topping their seeds up, probably doing them every 3 days now. So there's always a fresh seed there available for them. But they're not getting the chance to overgorge themselves. The hens, you'll also notice I've taken out a perch from the cages, so they're basically flying hard now. These are 16-inch cage fronts, so 32, 48, so effectively they're 4 foot long, these cages, and the perches are placed at either end. Now, there's no real height in the cages, but you can see the birds will start to fly end to end. Some of them aren't yet capable of flying end to end because they're still a little bit portly. The excesses of Christmas, I think it's happened to all of us. But they will get fit over the course of the next few weeks, and that's, you know, part of the build-up now to the show season with them. Intradine starts in earnest tomorrow, so next time we film we'll probably be on the second element of the Intradine treatment, or we may even have the build-up solution in there, and we've given that once before. But I think you can hear around the shed there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of activity with the cocks. Happy birds sing, and these birds seem to be very happy to be back in their home, their old home, in a new location. I'm just going to pop some grit now into the cockbirds' cages, but that's all we've got time for the show. Thanks very much for watching. As always, if you've got any questions, you can email us info@thecanaryroom.tv. Until next time, take care. The first boop of the new year.
Blowing a what?
Hoolie.
Blowing a hoolie.
Blowing a hoolie. Now, fat birds won't breathe. Well, unsurprisingly, as something falls in the canary room, clearly I haven't put the shed together that well, birds carrying an excess of fat won't breed.